Well, Susan Miller Timmons, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
You know, it's so hard to even call you that because I've always known you as Susan Miller.
Yep.
So I went to school with Susan back in middle school and actually haven't seen you for like over 35 years.
It's
How
kind
time,
of a trip.
I know how time flies, how time
Yeah.
flies. Susan, tell me a little bit about your family.
Well, I married Tad Tillmans, and you guys probably, people from Hendersonville might know him from the chapel. Todd Tillmans is his brother. Um, he's a psychiatrist here, and we have 3 kids. And Phoebe actually just moved back to Nashville. She's a songwriter. And then Boston is in high school. He's a sophomore. And Miles is 13. He turns 14 tomorrow.
Wow.
So,
Well, Susan, today I wanted to ask you a few questions. I know that you were the primary caregiver for both your mom and dad, but I wanted to ask you a few questions about that. And because I think the story gets lost so many times with people that have to, have to be the primary caregiver for their parents or a spouse. I'm sure that's got to be one of the toughest jobs ever.
it
So,
is. Nothing you can prepare yourself for.
yeah. So with that being said, when did you notice that your parents were starting to decline? And was it your mother or father first?
It was my mother first. Probably about a few months before she had a massive stroke. I noticed she was falling a lot, and she would tell me she was dizzy. Um, and the doctors check her out and stuff. She had high blood pressure, so they kind of attributed it to that. Um, but she had a massive stroke June 15th in 2018. 2018.
2018.
Mm-hmm.
So you live with pretty much that for 2 years at least.
Coming up, yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
So
And she had the stroke at home with my dad. And I don't know if you know, I'm in Little Rock, Arkansas. So I was having to try to take care of her and my dad from Little Rock. So at that point, I started driving back and forth a whole lot. Because for 12 weeks, they were going to try to rehab her. And she never got movement back in her left side. So it's just tragic.
yeah, I couldn't imagine being, because Little Rock or Arkansas is not a 10-minute drive from Nashville or Hendersonville, area. So that's not an easy task to try to, you still got to maintain the family that you've got. And then you've got, mom and dad over here. Dad also is older. And at this time he wasn't sick. I
Mm-mm.
don't believe, was he?
No, he wasn't sick. He was her primary caretaker, and she, like I said, she had high blood pressure and some heart issues. So he was always the one taking care of her, taking her to the doctor. And I didn't have to worry that much because he was in pretty good health.
Right.
And but they had been married 55 years,
Wow.
and it started to wane on him, and I started watching him kind of become depressed and not able to do the things he once did for her. So,
Do you think it was the struggle of doing the day-to-day stuff, or do you think it was more of an emotional, she's not going to get any better, I'm losing her, or all the above, probably?
all the above. And I don't think he realized, to him, when we had to decide to put her in the nursing home, I even begged him, Dad, why don't you come here and live with me? Bring mom here. He didn't want to do that because Hendersonville was their home, and he could still drive and he was still fine and he wanted to take care of her. But when we were coming up on a year, I noticed him kind of starting to not do well. He was starting to have dizzy spells and not he would cry when I would come up there. He was sad. So I think a lot of it was emotional.
Yeah, just heartbreak. I'm sure. I mean,
Yeah.
50 years and the love of your life is you see her going downhill. I'm sure that was definitely emotional. Not only to him, but to your whole family, because that really does put a strain. Because now you're trying to spend half your time, as much time as possible with the family, knowing that they're okay, and then the other with mom, and now you've got dad showing some issues too. What,
Right.
I mean, man, I couldn't even imagine, what were you even thinking? I mean, when you saw your dad start acting like that.
Um, First thing was he called me one day and he said, um, Susie, I can't see straight. I'm going to faint. And I said, well, Dad, I said, can you make it to a chair? And he said, yeah. I said, go sit in a chair. And I said, hold the phone. Hold the phone. And if somebody calls you, I want you to answer the phone. I was going to have the police come and check on him.
Mm-hmm.
So he had tried to call 911 and he was trying to call me. And I think I got him to unlock the door and go and sit down. So he sat down in his chair. And when 911 got there to take care of him, he had a mini stroke also. Mm. And I just hopped in the car and drove like a bat out of hell to get to Hendersonville to him, because I mean, this whole past year, it had just been me and him.
Right.
And I don't have any brothers and sisters. So it was really difficult. It's more difficult, I think, to talk about him because my mother, we kind of prepared ourselves for her. We had watched her go downhill because she really didn't want to be here. And in the midst of all this, I think that she knew that he might not be able to handle it. The last visit she had to my house, I think she had her living will with her and she hid it at my house. So when she actually had that stroke, and it was a massive stroke, and he couldn't care for her at home because it was 24-hour care. She couldn't even pick her hand up and brush her hair with her other side. She had to be fed everything. She was just stationary in a flat position. I actually.
And this went on for how long?
A year.
A year. Wow.
I actually found her living will right after my dad passed, underneath a seat cushion in a bathroom that had a bench seat in it. It's the most bizarre thing.
Wow.
And I've had so many weird things like that happen. But as soon as I got there to take care of her, I was walking in with the will in my hand, and she was throwing up bile, and it was bad. It's things that you just don't ever anticipate experiencing, you know?
Yeah.
And I hated that my dad was there the entire time by himself, you know? Sorry, I got to get a drink.
No. I know this is emotional, and I want to hear your story, and I think a lot of other people need and want to hear this story too. But I cringe thinking I'm going to say something that's gonna, because I know because we're talking, this is recent. This isn't something that was years and years ago. This is just recent. This just happened.
Yeah, the day after tomorrow, it'll be 6 months. So I've been pretty sad. This last time going to Hendersonville, when I drove in, I had to go up there to take care of some business with the probate stuff, and that's a whole nother issue. All of the documents in the house, and it's crazy. When I drove in Hendersonville, I just felt sick to my stomach. It was like just this anxiety and loss just floods your sense of being, especially, I mean, it's nice that I have a family, that's here in Arkansas,
Right.
but I don't have any other family except, my mom and dad's brothers and sisters that live away from here.
Right. So
They
it's not
don't
like
have,
you could share the load
no,
with a, a sibling.
nuh-uh. The only person I had that could really help was my dad's brother's daughter. And her name is Tamla. And if I wasn't for her, I don't know what I would have done. So it's
Well,
been rough.
well, I know there was a
It's
lot of people. I know there was a lot of people praying for you. I mean, I was trying to keep up with everything that was going on. My heart was breaking for you because, I could just see, hey, here's mom. That's bad enough, and now dad's, starting to react in a negative way too, and starting to go downhill. And I was just like, how much can somebody take?
yeah. First part was when they were apart from each other. My mom was in the nursing home, and my dad had just gotten taken to the hospital because he had had a mini stroke. Right after that phone call I just told you about. The worst part was while he was in the hospital, he was in there about 4 or 5 days, and he would just cry for her. And he would tell me, Susan, go check on mama. And so he would make me leave the hospital, drive to Gallatin to the funeral, the nursing home,
Right.
drive to the nursing home, see my mom, check and make sure she's okay, and hold the phone up for him to see her, and then come back to the hospital and have to take care of his medical needs. And it was literally back and forth and back and forth. I would come up there and sometimes go back and forth 3 times a day just to appease him so he could see her. The week before he passed away, I finally worked it out with the insurance company where they would approve 12 days, I think. It wasn't very much, 12 days of therapy for him because his was more cognitive.
Mm-hmm.
At the nursing home where my mom was. And so they were both there, and they were just down the hall from each other. And I just felt a sense of relief because at least they were together. And after 55 years of marriage, he couldn't take not being with her.
Right.
So the whole nursing home knew the story, and they all knew, that I was there as much as possible. I was literally coming home for 3 to 4 days and driving back to Hendersonville. And then I would come home for a week and then drive back for 4 days or 3 days. And then I would come home for 3 days and then go back. And I was just exhausted. Some of what I felt though, and I tried to keep my posts pretty positive because is that everybody felt a part of that journey. And what I realized is
Right.
there were so many people who were reaching out to me that wanted to help me and do things for me. And, when you're in the midst of it, you really don't know which end is up. You don't know who to ask or who not to ask or what to even ask for. You just don't know.
Right.
Especially if you're not in town. I did have some friends that offered to go and sit with my mom, which was so helpful. Like 3 or 4 people that just reached out to me on Facebook that I had known from school that I just had to trust. I would love it if you just go tell me how she's doing, know? And then in the midst of all this, you have the nursing home all in your stuff every 3 weeks because they want their money, and my parents just had a little bit too much. I mean, they were not wealthy by any means. They had enough to probably make it through retirement. So every month, the nursing home is saying, "Where's the money? Where's the money?" And
It's a business. It's a business to them.
oh, it's awful. And my dad, I think, honestly, he was heartbroken and he was scared to death that he was going to be broke and not have anything. And Medicare just kept turning him away because he had more than $1,000 in his account. But it wasn't a lot. There
Right,
was
right,
definitely not that much money there. So as a man, I could just see how he probably just lost hope, you know? He was just sad. He missed his wife, he missed me, and he felt defeated.
right.
And after he was at the nursing home for 5 days, he just didn't wake up.
Wow.
Really sad.
So your dad passed before your mother,
Yes.
and your mom is the one that started off. Wow.
Yeah. And, it's like you relish every moment. You just cherish every moment that you get with them, because there's something about when it's your parent, and I don't know, I can't even put it into words. I know I have so many friends who've lost a parent, and it's a member of a club you don't want to be a part of,
Right, right. Yeah,
So,
I lost my dad. My dad had a stroke, and I was with him. I moved to Virginia to take care of him and to be with him, and that's why I moved from Hendersonville, and then started a life out there. But it was really tough. It was tough. Um, I don't want to say I was fortunate or unfortunate, but he had a massive heart attack and passed away. So it wasn't like he was, in a nursing home or skilled facility or anything like that for a long time. So that really made it easier. You always hate to lose them, but
yeah, yeah.
it made it easier that he didn't sit there and suffer. So
Oh, yeah, yeah. And, I've had it both ways. I feel very fortunate that my mom allowed me to be with her when she passed. And I really believe, after being there for so long with those residents, that they know and they choose.
yeah,
And I've just been there so many times when the family would walk out of the room and the person would die, before they would come back. It was almost, uh, the timing was just crazy, you know?
right.
So I was holding her hand when she passed. So
That's sweet.
it is. I miss her. It's Mother's Day week, too.
I know, and I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I thought about that today. When I asked you to do this, and I thought, you'd be great at telling the story, and just letting other people know how it happened with you, and it could happen with them, and some things. If you were to think about some things that could be different that you wish either your mom or dad would have done, maybe a type of insurance policy or something like that, what would you say you wish they would have done different that would have helped out either them or you or both?
Well, one thing my parents did do was, they did have burial insurance, or funeral insurance, not burial.
Okay.
Um, the funeral insurance was so helpful. Hendersonville Memorial Gardens is who they went to, and the lady who sold them their policy was still there. And it was so helpful for that to be in place, because all I had to do was walk through the door, and they literally sat me down and helped me through every bit of it. What I think I would want people to know is that when you're facing a long-term illness, if I would have known that there was a such thing as long-term insurance, or anything, like at
Right.
my age now, at 52, I'm thinking, wow, I need to look into that, because
Right.
I don't want to put my kids through what I've just been through,
Hmm.
especially the feeling of you're facing all of this emotional turmoil and this heavy grief and decisions that you're having to make. And the idea that there's wills there that, you know, like one of my parents had a will, the other one didn't. So I'm having to deal with probate court, with all of the calls you have to make, the just how hard it is on you physically and emotionally. That if there was just an element of long-term insurance that dealt with that nursing home that I didn't have to deal with,
Right.
it would have been so much easier. I didn't even have a clue that I would even need that, or that it even existed, for that matter. I don't think I realized it existed. Mainly because you hear about retirement and you think, okay, you have to save for retirement. Well, that should cover if you get sick too. Well, that's a lot of money. Their nursing home was $6,000 to $7,000 a month. And I really believe that's one of the reasons that my dad passed, was the stress and that emotion of carrying that weight. And he knew he didn't have that kind of money to keep going the way it was going.
Mm.
So the heavy road, when you got people barking up your tree because they need this and they need that, and you're trying to run the house, keep all the bills paid, and deal with losing them, it's bad.
Yeah, to try to make decisions on the spot with all the stress and everything going on, I could only imagine. So, yeah, long-term care insurance, whether it's in a skilled facility or at home, I'm learning a lot more. Even though, so I've been an IT guy, and I was an IT guy for a insurance company that specialized in long-term care. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so I knew about it, but
Oh, wow.
it's something that, you know what, you can know about something, but if you don't put it in place and get it early, while you're in good health,
Yeah.
or the earlier, the younger you get it, the better price you get it. But
Well,
now
you
with
just don't think it's ever going to happen to you, and then here
no,
you are.
yeah, you're exactly right. Hey, I think long-term care, like at home care, to me, especially after this, COVID-19 issue that's been going around, and seeing how these skilled facilities are getting hammered. 100 patients, and
Oh, I know.
80 of them get taken to the hospital, and it's scary. So
I can't tell you the number of people who were calling me from that facility, because where my mother and father were was the first facility hit in Tennessee. And two of my aunt and uncles reached out. One of my friends sent me a text message saying, "Oh no, Susan," and I was so grateful that they weren't there. But my heart is just killing me for all the other residents, because my daddy was a big presence. And so I knew, like, everybody down the hall in the wing where my mom was, because my dad started bringing my mom's clothes up to the nursing home and giving them to people.
right.
And he would take care of people, and especially a lot of the residents that don't have family and they don't have anybody. But it ate away so quickly at that nursing home. It just broke my heart.
I'm sure. I am sure.
And this COVID is awful because, I've been watching a lot of testimonies from people who've had it that are trying to recover, and it just hangs on. It's like the virus doesn't completely go away. It leaves residual damage. I would never want to put my family in a nursing home after this.
I totally agree. I think this right here is going to change a lot of people's mind on how to do that. You know what? Hey, if you've got long-term care insurance, and you've got at-home care, which I understand is tagged with a lot of these, then
Yeah.
I would much rather my family be there. That way I could help, they could help. You could have somebody come in for hours, or depending on what, their needs really were. If it was 24/7 that they needed, then it's 24/7.
Right.
But it's at your home, and you're not having to worry about who's going to come in there bringing a package that potentially could be bringing in a virus or whatever. Because this probably, most likely, is not going to be the last time we hear about these type of viruses. So I
No,
think people now are probably going to be thinking a little bit different about all that.
I agree.
So, You
I
know,
agree.
I think it was interesting you were talking about. So, your parents did have like end of life type insurance, burial insurance. That part right there has got to be, because I've done that too many times, going in either with my family or my friends or other families that, you know, you go there and you sit and to try to make up your mind, you know, about this or about that. And it's like, I just want it over with.
Yeah. I mean, because they have to lay out all the prices and the
Right.
packages, and you don't even know what you're looking at. And, how just the fact that they had everything down, they had everything written down as to what they wanted. My mom even had things she wanted said at her funeral.
Oh,
And
that's awesome.
I mean, so many years ago, but some of them were true. They were still true. She was really proud of her teaching, and she wanted people to know that she loved teaching, which is, you know, it's just, it's simple things um, that were in that policy that helped me so much. So I didn't have to pick a casket because they went and picked it. I didn't have to,
Ah, what a help.
the only thing I had to do was pick pictures, pick out photos and put together like a pamphlet that told about her and her life, to write the obituary. But that's it.
Wow.
Yeah. And there's so much. I had no clue the amount of stuff you have to look at when you go into a funeral home. I mean, the package of charges and everything that you have to consider if you want to do it. I
Right.
was very, very thankful.
That's awesome. Well, Susan, thank you so much for spending time with me today. I was really interested. You know, my heart was broken for you because I know that you lost your parents. Now, how far apart were they?
Oh, well, um, my mom was always very intentional, but they were married 55 years. My mom died 55 days after my dad.
Oh my,
55, 55 days till the end of 2019 at 9:55 in the morning.
wow.
So there was something very intentional in that message, and I continue to look for it. I'm like pulling out all these books and the Bible and numerology books. Like, what does five, Mom? What are you trying to tell me? She just the weekend before she died, I was sitting with her. It was Friday, and I said, Mom, I said, I need to go home and get some sleep. Is it okay if I go on to the house to sleep? And she looked at me and she said, stay. And so I sat down and I held her hand, and we watched that PBS hour, where
Hmm.
on Friday nights, I think the Osborne brothers were
Right.
on, and they sang an old song called There's Nothing Like Susan When She Tries. But I didn't know the song, so I thought it said There's Nothing Like Susan When She Cries. And I was sitting there, I was like, Mom, are you hearing this song? Listen to this song. They're saying there's nothing like Susan when she cries. And my mom just kind of smiled and she was laughing. She'd go, huh, huh.
Right. She
So
knew
I
the
was
song.
like, yeah, I said, it says there's nothing like Susan when she cries. Of course, it was Tries, and it was about this girl, Susan, who'd been through all these horrible relationships. But after the song, we both sat there and I was holding her hand. And I Go to the Garden Alone was the next song. And I just sat there and cried because I knew it was coming,
Right.
And they told me, that she had stopped eating. She wasn't taking any food or drink. They had started giving her a little bit of morphine. And they told me she would probably last 24 hours at the most. And she lasted from that Friday until Wednesday.
Wow.
And that made the 55 days. And the doctors were like, I don't know, why is she still living, not in a bad way, but what, I don't
Right.
understand why,
She's
and
holding on for something.
I do. She's holding on for something.
Right.
And I think it's just a message that she wanted to communicate. And I'm grateful for that. You know, I'm grateful for all the little things, like when I had to run back home not too long ago, the irises and the peonies are all blooming, and they were hers, you know, and my grandmother's. And I drove in and I just cried, you know. So I choose to be grateful.
There you go.
Grateful for the time that I had with them.
Right. Well, Susan, thank you much. Thank you so much. And I appreciate your story. And I'm sure others are gonna listen to this, and because it is a eye opener on things that you don't think about could happen.
Yeah.
So
it's so hard. It's so hard. Yeah.
So thank you once
again.
Think
about your kids. Think about your kids.
Exactly. So thank you
It's great
so much.
to talk to you.
Great
Thank
talk.
you, David.
Great talking to you, Susan.
You too.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.